Welcome to the Adult Basic Skills Professional Development video series. Throughout our productions, we are committed to excellence in adult education and professional development in basic skills instruction. The goal of this video series is to improve the effectiveness and quality of instruction through focused professional development.
Each of us is aware of, and at least partially proud of, our own individuality. However, finding out exactly who you are takes time and is not easy, especially for younger people. It has even been shown that identical twins who have been raised together strive to distinguish their individual personalities. The obvious diversity of people is reflected in any classroom. An instructor must not only recognize, but celebrate the variety in students' learning styles. The persistent mismatch of teaching styles with learning styles is a problem in today's schools. If a public school teacher can develop a teaching style that sufficiently matches the learning style of 60 to 75% of the students, that teacher can claim success. There would still be 25 to 40% of students failing to learn from those instructors. These students often move on to adult basic skills classrooms. We cannot expect students to succeed in adult basic skills coursework just because they are hearing it again. Success should not be expected just because an adult basic skills class uses a slower pace. Nor is it likely to happen because the instructor does a better job of teaching in the same old way. As students mature, they tend to buckle down. The greater effort may be helpful, but is unlikely to be the solution to all their learning difficulties. We certainly cannot expect a year or two of maturity to make a major difference in our youngest students. Providing an appropriate learning environment for our youngest students requires understanding why they have not succeeded in the past and how their personalities and learning styles differ from those of their more successful peers. This video focuses on the youngest students in the adult basic skills classroom. In the first part of the video, we use personality types as a tool to help instructors discover learning style characteristics. This strategy helps instructors identify and address the temperaments of individuals and the way they need to learn. By understanding the diversity of individuals and their interactions, an instructor can better address the needs of his or her students. The second part of this video provides guidelines for structuring a classroom designed to provide the opportunity for the youngest students to achieve greater success. A fresh approach for meeting our youngest students' needs may be all it takes to propel them into a brighter future. To be effective and understand their concerns, conflicts, goals, and aspirations, adult basic skills instructors must attempt to step into the world of the student. Let's ask some students why they left high school, why they enrolled in adult basic skills, and what their goals are for the future.
I think the reason I dropped out of high school was it just didn't work. Teachers weren't good. I mean, they had too many kids in their classes. I just didn't feel like going to class.
I dropped out of regular high school because I was involved in a car accident and messed up my right eye and was absent from class too long. And they were not willing to work with me and said that if I wanted to come back to that particular high school, I would have to take 4 zeros for the classes that I missed, and that would drop my GPA.
Okay, I quit from public high school because I hated the teachers, because they were just not very friendly and they didn't tell me anything, and when I had questions they wouldn't sit down and help me. They'd say, well, if you would have read the thing then you would know, and I just didn't particularly like that too much. and I just had a problem with being around so many people. I mean, yeah, you get along with a few, but there are just a few you just can't get along with, and it gets hard to deal with going to school every day.
I came to Central Carolina because whenever I went to enroll back after missing a semester to traditional high school, they wouldn't work with me. I moved out on my own. I was 17 at the time. I had my house. I needed rent money, and they wouldn't work with me to let me out early enough to hold a full-time job. So I still wanted to graduate because I needed to go to college. I want to be a teacher. That's my main goal, and they just wouldn't work with me. I had to find an alternate way to get my diploma because I didn't want a GED. And I heard about this place. I came here, checked it out, and it's working great. I'm making better grades here than I did in traditional school. And it's not because the work is necessarily easier. It's just you have more one-on-one action with the teacher. They'll take the time to explain things to you more in depth rather than just giving you something and saying, here, do this.
I start fall college in Sanford at Central Carolina Community College. I'm going to be taking criminal justice and criminology. And then when I turn 21, I'll go back and take basic law enforcement training, and hopefully by the time I'm 25, I'll be a state trooper.
My goals for the future are first to graduate high school, which I'll do in like a couple weeks. Secondly, I'm going to get a community college and I want to become a teacher. I'm going to transfer to a 4-year school, and I want to start a school kind of like this, except I think I would like to have it be at private school, but to work it out to where, like, I'd love to get state funding, but so I guess it would have to be a public school where everybody can come. That is, everybody can come, but there need to be like a little less strict regulations.
Adult basic skills students seem much less clear on why they left high school than on identifying their goals for the future. Their answers to the first question usually reflect a defensive attitude that hides a sense of failure, a feeling that they are not as smart as their peers who were more successful in high school. The tone of their answers depicts their desire to blame the system or anyone other than themselves for their previous failures. What they may not realize is that the system itself may likely have been a cause of many of those failures, because the system catered to specific personalities and learning styles quite different from their own. There are many books and studies on personality types. One such book, Please Understand Me Too, explores the two sides of personality, temperament and character. Think of temperament as that portion of personality that people are born with, and character as the portion people learn. Dr. Keirsey's 4 temperaments, intuitive thinkers, intuitive feelers, sensing judges, and sensing perceivers, are based on how people communicate with each other and how they use tools to accomplish their goals. Let's take a closer look at each temperament and see how the strength of one might be stressful for another. Recognizing the diversity in personality types and the effect that it can have on a specific teaching style allows the thoughtful instructor to adjust the classroom environment. Doing so allows the instructor to adjust teaching strategies in ways that will equalize the learning opportunities for all students. It is not necessary that the instructor evaluate each personality temperament. Perceptive instructors quickly learn to recognize signs of each temperament without administering formal tests. It is, however, important that adult basic skills instructors be prepared to teach in a manner that will be most effective considering the variety of personality types and learning styles that usually occur in their classrooms. Studying the characteristics and stresses of each temperament will help instructors to identify their own temperaments and to predict the conflicts between their natural instructional style and the preferred learning style of each student. The hallmark of a superior instructor is the willingness to make the effort to vary instructional techniques, addressing a variety of student needs. All personality types may enter the adult basic skills classroom, but the sensing perceiver's temperament is most likely to be predominant, particularly amongst our younger students. Why does this happen? Research indicates that 7% of high school teachers are sensing perceivers, compared to 40% of high school students. A major conflict occurs between sensing perceivers and sensing judges. Almost half of high school teachers are sensing judges. This explains why many sensing perceiver students end up in the adult basic skills classroom, where they often make up more than half of our youngest students. A quick review of the strengths and stresses for sensing judges and sensing perceivers' temperaments will show why they do not function well in a student-teacher relationship. For example, a sensing judger teacher values rules, responsibility, and planning, but is stressed and frustrated by the spontaneous risk-taking personality of the sensing perceiver. Conversely, a sensing perceiver student hates inflexibility and being told what to do, which is the natural instructional pattern of the sensing judger teacher. To understand our youngest students, it is important to understand the real reason for their previous failures. Certainly, they may be irresponsible and self-centered in comparison to more mature adult basic skills students, or generations that were raised with a so-called work ethic. However, writing them off as unmotivated is a misjudgment which will practically guarantee their failure. Taking time to really understand each of them is highly desirable but difficult. The laudable goal of understanding each of their aspirations and frustrations cannot be done with the time available for most adult basic skills instructors, unless those instructors begin with a basic understanding of the fundamental reasons behind their students' past failures. Let's begin with a more thorough evaluation of the 4 temperaments defined by Keirsey, particularly of the sensing perceiver's temperament that is so prevalent in the adult basic skills classroom. Adult basic skills students, particularly the younger students, are most likely to have the sensing perceiver personality. The hallmark of this personality is the need to feel free and spontaneous. They are playful and thrive in unstructured settings. To many of their instructors, their most frustrating feature is the joy these students obtain from working around the rules. The better instructors learn to appreciate their creativity and resourcefulness. The major conflicts between sensing perceiver students and most instructors arise from the students' disdain for planning, predictability, and rules, and their total resentment of being told what to do. They may also dislike timelines and paperwork. Structuring a classroom in which sensing perceiver students will not be turned off by planning, rules, paperwork, and schedules may be the most challenging task an adult basic skills instructor ever undertakes. However, trying to reorient the sensing perceiver student to function in a more structured environment, desirable though that seems, might be an even more daunting task. Of course, the adult basic skills classroom will contain some students of each of the 4 temperaments, and classroom composition will vary. Although it is not possible to predict which other temperaments will be represented in a small class, adult basic skills classes often include intuitive thinkers. Although they are analytical and intellectual, these students become frustrated by things that do not challenge their abilities and intelligence. They also dislike emotional or disorganized environments and seeing others get special treatment. In other words, they are likely to be frustrated by attempts to cater to sensing judger students. Since intuitive thinkers like to argue and debate, and since they like to pursue things on an intellectual level, it is natural for sensing judger students to resent them. This conflict and the tendency of intuitive thinker students to become frustrated with things they perceive as illogical explain why they may find their way to an adult basic skills classroom. Avoiding the potential conflict between sensing judger and intuitive thinker students is a formidable challenge for any instructor. The adult basic skills instructor must also be keenly aware that being treated as incompetent is the #1 source of stress for the intuitive thinker student. Intuitive feelers usually succeed in school because they want to please others and they like to learn. However, they may not have succeeded in their previous education environment if it lacked harmony or had too much conflict, or if they were treated impersonally. They thrive on personal attention and love to communicate. Since intuitive feelers look for the potential in others, they are likely to value opportunities to participate in collaborative learning, and they often try to help other class members. When recognized, intuitive feeler students can be a valuable resource in the adult basic skills classroom. Sensing judges may be the least likely to be represented in the adult basic skills classroom because their personalities coincide with the system and with most high school instructors. Their strengths are organization, responsibility, planning, and being prepared for whatever comes their way. They become frustrated if things seem to get out of control with change or inconsistency, or when people don't take things seriously. The adult basic skills instructor of a different temperament will need to be cognizant of these qualities. Now that we have reviewed the major personality temperaments, let's look at some guidelines an adult basic skills instructor might use to structure a classroom to permit greater success in teaching our youngest students. The first step in addressing the problems created by divergent personalities and temperaments in the adult basic skills classroom is to recognize their existence. Becoming aware of how frequently the strength of one temperament is the stressor for another can only lead to the conclusion that teaching styles must be varied if all adult basic skills students are to realize their potential. We suggest the following guidelines be used as a focus for structuring a classroom approach which provides this variability. Make a paradigm shift. In order to work successfully with young basic skills students, an instructor might need to shift paradigms. Letting go of the traditional control paradigm lets the instructor encourage rather than attempt to control students. Allow your young students to capitalize on their strengths. Offer a choice. Many, in fact most younger students, just by virtue of being young, resent being told what to do. Resentment interferes with the student's performance, especially if the instructor follows the traditional "do what I say" pattern. Offering students choices allows their learning to be self-motivated and directed. Motivate learning. Remember that for our youngest students, learning may not be its own reward. To motivate learning, it may be necessary to allow students to do something that is both fun and relevant to their needs. Remember that most adult basic skills students need to be able to visualize the payoff for their efforts. Offer supportive relationships. At-risk students need to develop supportive relationships. Their success is so tied to this need that the instructor must take a proactive role in assisting with the development of those relationships, both with other students and with the instructor. It is particularly important that a positive and supporting relationship is built between the instructor and the student. This does not require a time-consuming effort. It can be accomplished by greetings, smiles, and genuine caring. It is important that instructors project an open and caring persona so that students will think of them as someone they can come to when they have a problem. Always treat the students as individuals. This is especially important for those with the intuitive feeler temperament, but it will inspire all students. Provide role models. Our younger students need someone to believe in, and they need role models. Help them to find models in yourself and in others by noting good peer examples. They need to believe in themselves. Build resiliency. Help students build resiliency by instilling positive and hopeful attitudes. Help them identify with their strengths, not with their deficiencies. Our youngest students need to feel that they are in charge of their own lives and that their choices are their own. They need to believe in themselves. As students become more resilient, they will be more likely to make good choices and less likely to blame others when things go wrong. Teach them that being happy is a choice. Help them learn to look at situations in terms of what they can do, not in terms of what they can't control. Offer variety. Few at-risk students learn from lecture. For many, it only brings back bitter memories and negative attitudes. By offering a variety of teaching and learning techniques, the instructor heightens students' attention. Such techniques include role plays, journal writing, case studies, poems, analogies, games, and group discussions. Consider spontaneity. Spontaneity can touch many students in your classroom. Recall the positive qualities of a good instructor: planning, organization, and step-by-step instruction. These are not always positive qualities through the eyes of students. Structuring the learning environment around creativity and hands-on projects actually engages many younger students in their own learning. Create an accepting classroom. The ideal classroom fosters an attitude that a mistake is an opportunity to learn. This learning atmosphere alleviates much of the anxiety that many basic skills students bring to the classroom. Plan ways for students to experiment and to experience success. As their self-image improves, they will be able to achieve more and greater successes. When possible, avoid time limits and capitalize on students' strengths. Remember that our younger students usually have greater computer skills and are likely to have superior study skills in comparison to older students. Create a positive atmosphere. Take steps to create a learning environment free of rudeness, disrespect, and criticism. Acting superior, casting blame, making fun of someone, and criticizing any aspect of their behavior cannot be tolerated. The instructor must personify positive attitudes and motivate students to do the same. Anticipate problems. Anticipating problems, both in learning and in creating an orderly learning environment, allows the adult basic skills instructor to detect problems at an earlier stage in their development. Problems should be diffused at the lowest level so that they have less chance to interfere with learning. Catching problems early in the learning process can also prevent student resentment toward learning. In our youngest students, such resentment can happen quickly and be devastating to their learning goals. A national survey conducted by Phi Delta Kappa identified individualized instruction as the most frequently cited characteristic of a successful instructional program for at-risk students. Even if an instructor cannot provide true individualized instruction, there are many ways the instructor can show students that they are cared about as individuals and that their education is important. The personal touch can turn many negative attitudes into dedicated efforts. Genuine concern and the personal touch are vital to retention. Research points out that the first 3 weeks are the critical period for student retention. Therefore, it is very important to establish comfortable interactions early in the course. Research also indicates that students characterized as reluctant learners enter the classroom with higher expectations and more faith in the educational system. It is perhaps for this reason that these students are most likely to drop out, since they are likely to become disillusioned more quickly. The high expectations and greater faith in education may cause these students to appear to be less at risk in the first few classes. Instructors must get to know students as quickly as possible and provide personal attention as required by each learning style to all basic skills students. Be aware of previous negative experiences. Temperament and learning style differences are only two of many circumstances that may put a student at a competitive disadvantage. Others include health problems, social adjustment problems, and dysfunctional families. Although the major reason for previous failures by most adult basic skills students is likely to be the mismatch of teaching and learning styles, many students also fall victim to the bell curve. Regardless of the reason for being on the wrong side of the bell curve, students learn that they are below average students. Once that becomes their self-image, the median becomes a barrier that psychologically they are unable to transcend. Changing that negative self-image must be a major goal of the adult basic skills instructor. However, it is a painfully slow process. One way to help is to erase the bell curve and avoid ranking students. Student success must be measured in terms of gains and competencies, not in terms of how students compare to other students. Many students are the product of tracking and were labeled as inferior by that system. In fact, even when the student was placed into the wrong track, that placement tended to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. No matter how schools identify their different tracks, students quickly decipher the code and label the dummy group. Years of being associated with the dummy group creates a negative self-image which can only be overcome by a very long string of successes. The perceptive instructor will identify ways to permit success and to build on those successes with greater successes. This process can be augmented by what one researcher describes as turning liabilities into assets. For example, vocabulary changes, such as visualizing and describing students as carefree rather than irresponsible, flexible rather than unpredictable, persistent rather than stubborn, and eager rather than impatient. Actually, many of the descriptions traditional instructors now regard as negative would be admired by many students in a high school setting. Joining in that admiration of the at-risk students' major qualities will resolve much of the traditional us versus them conflict. Only then can students build greater self-esteem because they see themselves as worthy and as fitting in. In conclusion, remember, no one can change another person who does not want to change. Showing students that you value who they are may just cause them to strive to become better at being who they are. What a great outcome! Be aware that they have worked hard at developing and defending their attitudes, behavior, and personality. It is very likely that they have been badgered to change by adults who have spent far more time with them than you. Criticism invariably makes them even more defensive. However, your praise and encouragement may lead to a desire to improve just to please themselves.